Hey guys, welcome back to Subtractive Synthesis 101 with Sonic Academy. In today's video, we're going to start looking at some leads. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 2 or 3 leads. And the first one we're going to do is, I mentioned in another video about the Between the Rays track, Orjan Jelsen, however you pronounce his name. And the lead in that track is quite interesting because he's combining a couple of different oscillator types there. And the first thing we're going to do is the main component of that lead is a square wave. Now, remembering back to what we talked about how oscillators sound, the square wave is quite hollow sounding, and that's the main body of that lead. And what we need to do is we need to give it a couple of voices, let's say 3, and we're going to drop it down an octave because I think playing it here is too high. So let's drop it down an octave. We're going to switch retrigger off, I think. Yeah, let's switch it off for now and give it a little bit of detune. That's probably enough. Now, I mean, I can't play the track right now, but what he's done is he's layered this square sound with, there's like a big wide saw underneath. And what the square does, the square, because it's hollow and because it's bright, it cuts through. And the saw waves underneath kind of pad it out and give it a bit of body. So, in fact, first what we'll do is we're just going to set up the amp envelope. We need 0 attack because we want the start of the sound to come straight in. And I'm just going to take the decay and sustain down a bit, not too much, just so that as you hold the note down, it fades out just a little bit. And let's give it some release, because remember, if you have release set to 0, sometimes you get a bit of a click at the end of the note, and that can be the same with the amp envelope or even the filter envelope as well. So just be careful of that. Yeah, that sounds about right. So let's switch over to the second oscillator, and we're going to whack the voices up to 8, and let's pick a sawtooth wave. And let's turn the volume down because this could be quite loud because we've got so many voices. And definitely turn retrigger off this oscillator. And let's give it some detune. Just switch the other oscillator down for a second. Right, drop this one an octave as well. Something like that. So just wondering if this might need a bit more. No, I think that's probably okay. No, they're definitely the same octave. Right, the other thing he's done is he's added some modulation to the pitch of both oscillators. So if we come down to LFO1, and we'll set the rate up at, I think it's around a 16th note. So let's try that. Where are you? There you are. And we will send this LFO to pitch A, and pitch A in silent is both oscillators. Put my teeth back in. Because A is the part A, so you've got both oscillators on part A. So we don't want too much gain. Remember, gain is amplitude, how high up and down the oscillator goes. And then we'll decide how much we want to send to the oscillators themselves. So let's listen. I'm not sure if that's the right speed. Let's try. Yeah, I think that's a bit better. 16th dotted. No, so that's the rate we're going to set. Right, I think I'm just going to give it a little bit of EQ. Just to get the mids up a little bit. Because I recall I had a quick listen to the track before I did this video, and it's the lead itself is actually quite muted. He's got this bright square wave, but it's quite muted in the track. Now, of course, he's going to have done a lot of mixing, and there's probably a ton of compression and effects on that lead, but we're trying to just do the basics in silent here. And one thing we will need to do is smother it with lashings of reverb, because that's one of the main features of this lead. So I think I will probably do it about there. So we're getting there. Now let's tweak the square. I'm not sure if this square is quite right yet, so something like that. Just need to listen to this saw again. I think the reverb's a little bit too metallic, so let's just dampen it off a little bit. Take it down just a touch. Okay, that's probably as close as I'm going to get in this little session here. So let's just recap on what we've done. We've chosen a square oscillator, which we've given a little bit of detune, and that's the kind of cutting top end, and that's what defines the sound of a lead more than anything else. And in the track, he's used a saw. I'm not sure if he's used it in the same patch, but there's definitely some kind of detuned saw underneath that sound as well. And from memory, I think it's panned a little bit to the left. So what I'd like you to think about here is using different oscillators to kind of carve out different characteristics in your lead. You don't always have to use the same synth. You can layer synths up, but where the synth gives you the opportunity, it's a good idea to try and get them in one patch, because then you can filter them all together and it becomes easier for automation, etc. So that's that lead. I think what we're going to do next is close down silent, and I will open up Anna, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a fairly standard trance supersaw. Now, back in the day, they used to use a lot of really quite heavily detuned saws, which is not quite so fashionable now. So we're going to start off with oscillator 1, and I'm going to choose a standard saw wave in Anna, and I think I'll give it kind of, do you know what, I'm going to give it 7 voices, because I think that's what the old JP8080s used to use. They had 7 oscillators detuned. And have I? No, see, I nearly caught myself out again. I'm going to drop the volume, because we're going to be stacking quite a few saw waves here, so it might get quite loud. So first thing we need to do is lose retrig, because we don't like that with super saws. And we're going to give it some detune. And let's use the detuned shape to kind of choose a timbre, a timbre. Give it some width. Right, and I'm also going to drop it an octave, because it's too high where I'm playing at the moment. Okay, that'll do for now. I think what we'll do next is we'll swap over to oscillator 2, and because you can do this in Anna, I'm going to choose a different kind of saw wave, and I do like this. I think this is a profit saw, so I'll choose that one, and we'll give this one full 8 voices, drop it an octave again. Excuse me. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to layer up different kinds of wide saw sound. So we're adding textures on top of each other. So I will turn down oscillator 1, and just try and get an ear on oscillator 2. Got a frog in my throat. Lose the retrig. Give it some width again. So if you whack the detuning up, that's the kind of really heavy detuned sound. I mean, going back to who are those guys? Dengar and Manas. I think that's how you pronounce them. The Vengeance Boys. Kind of cheesy trance that I confess to loving. But they used a lot of this, that kind of really heavily detuned. It's not used so much anymore. It's more defined now because there's a lot of layering that goes on these days. In fact, I watched the Seven Skies video that's up on Sonic Academy as well. If you see the way he layers up the saws, it kind of all sounds like one sound, but it's not. There's quite a lot going on there. Anyway, I'm rambling. So we're trying to get this in the sweet spot. You need to do this by ear. Okay, that'll do. So what we'll do now is we'll feed back in oscillator 1. And one thing you can try is if you have two oscillators happening at the same time, if you can fade one of them in and out and then fade the other one in and out, and you can hear a difference happening, that means they're layering up quite nicely. If you take one out and you can't hear a difference, it means they're kind of doing the same thing, so you probably don't need both of them. So let's try and lose the second one and see what happens. Yeah, I mean, it's not just getting louder. You can hear a different kind of sound. And to accentuate that, what we can do is we can pan oscillator 1 to the left a little bit and oscillator 2 to the right a little bit. So that gives us even more width. Okay, moving on to oscillator 3. We'll lose the retrig. I'll choose the other kind of saw wave here. They've got M saw, which I think, as I said before, is a Moog saw. I could be wrong there. And we'll give this one 8 voices as well. Come on, Energy UI, you can do it. There you go. And drop it an octave and do the same thing. Just, I'm not sure where I want. Probably too much. Give this some width as well. In fact, I might widen this all the way out because we've got the other two left and right. Okay, that'll do. And I mentioned noise before, and I mentioned how noise can be used to brighten up a top end or add some dirt or some grit, and that's what we're going to do here because it's quite common these days as well. So let's choose our white noise oscillator. And you won't need much at all. You'll just need a kind of little touch of this. Yeah, so. And without. Let me feed that back in again. So that's just adding some brightness. And if you think about the way that tracks are mixed these days, that noise, once you start compressing layers together, that noise will add a lot of perceived loudness. So if you're trying to get tracks loud, God forbid, then that's one way of doing it. You add white noise. Now, one effect that this kind of sound adores is delay. So what we'll do is we'll switch the delay on, and I like an 1/8 dotted note on one side and a 1/4 note on the other side. I mean, choose whatever you like, really. And we don't want it all the way panned left and right. And I'm just going to lose some of the bottom end, tiny bit of the top end, otherwise it'll get harsh. And then just whack it up, really. So let's see what that sounds like. Probably need more feedback. So we're getting there, and I think The only other thing you'd really need to do to this is add some reverb. What you want, the reverb, the kind of reverb you want on here is you want quite a big space, but you don't want massive reverb tails because it really does start to get muddy if you do that. So let's increase the size a little bit, take the decay time down. It doesn't actually give you a time here, which is a little bit frustrating because you probably want something between 2 and 3 seconds. Not always, but that's what I tend to choose. And low pass, let's give it a bit of damping, so we're taking off the really top end, because otherwise you're going to get the white noise oscillator triggering the reverb, and it could start to sound a bit harsh. So let's see what that sounds like. Might be a bit much. We don't want a lot. Probably a little bit too much delay. What have I got? Oh, I've chosen the wrong ones. Let's try this. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So this kind of lead, you can use it for stabs, like, and then you can use it for lead lines as well, or you could use it for chords. Let's try. So you can use it for kind of stabby chords or just like a lead itself. Now, one other trick you can do with a sound like this is we haven't put a filter on this yet, although there's a filter active, but it's not doing it. So if we take this sound and we use our filter envelope to create a pluck. Now, the plucks that you hear in trance a lot, they're comprised mainly of supersaws. So let's just use this 2-pole that we've got selected here already. Give it some envelope amount, and we'll take the release down. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch this to a linear curve. And if you recall what I said before, these lines here you don't always get on envelopes, but if it's a straight line, it means the amplitude. If you set the attack, if you set the attack up, the line going from the attack to the decay phase is completely straight. And this one is slightly curved, and this one is even more curved. So it works in a similar way to the filter curves. So if you remember 6 decibels per octave, 12 decibels per octave, it's not exactly the same, but think of it that way. But for this case, I want a straight curve going up and down. So let's bring the cutoff down so we can hear what we're doing. So you've already got that plucky trance sound there. And to give you an idea of how that sounds, I've actually put some MIDI in. I've just thrown a few notes in here. Where are we? Click. So it's like a little arpeggiated sequence. And the classic way to use these kind of sounds is to take the filter cutoff all the way down. And it's it's like a build-up sound. So let's listen to it. What tempo are we at? Yeah, that'll do. So yeah, that's turning the big massive supersaw into quite a nice little plucky arpeggiated sound. I think that's all we can do with this one for now. I think what I'll do next, I've got another instance of Anna here. So let's do one more. I think we need to combine. Let's think about combining oscillators. What I'll do is I'll create like an acid lead patch. So the way I do it, there's a number of ways to do it. I mean, acid sounds traditionally, in inverted commas, they used to come out of the TB303, the old Roland box, and that had a saw wave or a square wave, and then it ran through its own kind of squishy little filter. But what I like to do, and this is some tricks that I used to do with the Adam Ellis stuff, is I'll take a saw. Oh, he says, I will take a saw wave, nice and pure, retrigger off please, and let's drop it an octave. And for the second oscillator, I'm going to choose a square wave. Remember, pulse wave is the same thing, and drop that an octave as well. Give it a voice. Retrig off. Actually, yeah, I'm going to drop the pulse, the square wave, an octave below the saw. So you've already got something quite crunchy and meaty there. It's quite loud, let me turn it down. So what we do with this is we're going to run this through a bandpass filter. And the bandpass BP, let's try, in fact I'm just going to keep it simple, I'm just going to use a normal one. And for this we push the resonance up. Now if you remember, resonance accentuates the frequency at which the cutoff point is set. So this is going to push that band that you're using up even higher. And what you'll get is immediately a kind of screaming, that kind of sound, which I personally adore, in case you hadn't noticed by my sound sets. So what we can do is, if we assign velocity, let's do this down here in the modulation section. We'll take velocity and assign it to the cutoff of filter 1. Now you don't need much. You can actually do this here as well, but I'm just doing it with a modulation slot so you can see what I'm doing. Now as I hit the notes at different velocities, you can hear that cutoff point changing, but I think it sounds nicer if you got the cutoff itself down a bit further. So the low notes are kind of around there, and then you have to hit the note. You have to give the note quite a whack to get the really top end squelchy sounds. Now next thing to do, this is another kind of sound that really likes delay. It's good friends with the delay. So let's choose a different one this time. I'm probably going to do the same thing. Now let's do a quarter note on one side and an eighth on the other. I usually do an eighth dotted, but let's go nuts. And we're going to keep the pan quite wide, take out some of the bottom end on the delay signal, probably take out some top end as well, give it tons of feedback. And then the other thing you can do is if you assign the mod wheel to cut off as well. So you can play low. Let's give it maybe that much. So as I'm playing low, so I just knock the microphone. And then you can use the mod wheel to really, really bring it up. So you can use those for really kind of fast, acidic. I mean, you could use that a lot in psytrance or tech trance and uplifting trance. You have those really acidic, arpeggiated lines going along the background, really kind of atmospheric, and you could throw a lot of reverb on those as well. That would sound really cool. So what have we done there? We've done 3.5 leads there. We did the raise one with a square. Then we did the big trance stab, which we turned into a kind of plucky sound, and then this acid sound as well. And I think in the final sound design video, I'll start looking at, I'll do some pads. I don't want to spend too long on pads. Try and do a couple of textural sounds as well. And we will talk about some of the other kinds of oscillators and filters that you could possibly use. I mean, it's a kind of never-ending story because each synth has got its own bits and pieces in it. So I'll see you there.